Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, Living the Sacred Blessings of the Women Mystics and Goddesses, the 12-week journey that invites you to enter a sacred sanctuary, set down your fears and challenges, and allow inner strength, love, and healing to arise organically through the transformative energies of the Divine Feminine. My name is Nadira Ade, and it is my pleasure to be hosting this hour-long Q&A call for the Shift Network, where we will explore the teachings of Mirabai Starr and address questions about her upcoming course, which begins next Wednesday, April 15th. Later, I will explain how you can participate in this course, even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to take a moment to introduce our special guest. Mirabai Starr is a highly sought-after expert on feminine mystics and goddesses, recently named one of the 100 most spiritually influential living people in 2020 by Watkins Mind, Body, Spirit magazine. She taught philosophy and world religions at the University of New Mexico, Taos for 20 years, and now teaches and speaks internationally on contemplative practice and interspiritual dialogue. A certified bereavement counselor, Mirabai helps mourners harness the transformational power of loss. Her latest book, Wild Mercy, Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics, was named one of the best books of 2019 by Spirituality and Practice. Her unique insights into the divine feminine show us how to live into the sacred and how this can enrich our personal spiritual practice and help us cultivate more courage, self-empowerment, and self-compassion for facing life's challenges. In just a few moments, we are going to open up for your questions, but first, let me welcome Mirabai, who will begin our call by leading us in an opening meditation. Mirabai, welcome to the call.
Thank you so much, beautiful Nadira, and welcome everyone. I look forward to trying to meet your questions in a very organic and authentic way today. And so I'd like to begin by grounding into the silence from which all the words arise, into which they dissolve again. So if you would just please join me in just a couple of moments of contemplative presence before we dive in, that would be wonderful. So I invite you to begin by becoming aware of your physicality, of your body in this space, in your seat right now. And taking 3 deep breaths at your own pace, inhaling deep, deep, deep into your body, and then holding the in-breath for a few beats before exhaling completely, and holding the exhalation for a few beats. Feel the way your awareness naturally flows into the container of this present moment, that your breath carries you like a raft into the center of your own being, breathing at your own pace, deeply in, holding, letting it all go, and holding. Lingering in those threshold spaces between the breaths. Not afraid of the emptiness. Curious, soft, open. And now taking a moment to ground into the earth, to drop the roots of your being from the base of your spine deep into the body of the earth, intermingling with her roots, using your imagination. Feel the way she holds you, keeps you safe and connected. Feel the way you belong to her, to our Mother, the Earth. How she gives us refuge. Take refuge in her now. Just taking a few breaths naturally, softly, feeling your belonging. Rooted, grounded, connected, embodied. And now before we begin to answer any questions or play around with the questions, I don't know if I have any answers, but as you know, if you've worked with me before, I probably have some responses. But before we do that, I'd like to light this candle to clear the space, to open sacred space, ritual space right now. Calling in the ancestors, especially the grandmothers, the wisdom beings that surround us always, but especially when we call on them and welcome them. So please, Divine Mother, Sacred Lover, Gaia, be with us as we endeavor to align ourselves with your holy presence in our lives. May we embody you and be a source of embodied feminine wisdom, we of all genders, for the highest good of all beings. Thank you. Okay, ready when you are.
Yes, Ashe and Amina and Amen. Thank you so much. We want to devote as much of our time together as possible to your questions for Mirabai. So if at any time during this call you want to learn more about this 12-week course, please visit goddessesandmystics.com to see the full description. And if you have questions for our customer service department, you can contact our outstanding customer support team directly at support.theshiftnetwork.com. And now we're going to dive into the questions. If you have a question for Mirabai and you haven't already, please offer your questions. I'm happy to read them. Please also be aware that we have quite a few questions coming in, and so we may not be able to get to all of them. The first question that I am offering is from actually someone who submitted it anonymously and said, I've never taken a seminar like this. I'm wondering if it is a good option for someone who is at the beginning of their spiritual path.
What a beautiful, authentic question. Thank you for asking. Yes, because I am trusting that if you're being drawn to this, you're not as much of a beginner as you probably think you are. There's something in your soul that has already um, been asking for something deeper than the kind of superficial goodies of our everyday lives in mainstream society, right? That there is a deeper thirst in you for something, and I think this will be a drink of water that your thirsty soul is curious about, if not actually yearning for. And so, if some of the more, I don't know, detailed descriptions of the path, or some of the language, because I'll be drawing from Sanskrit and Hebrew and other sacred languages, because there will be certain words that are best expressed in those languages. If those feel unfamiliar or strange to you, you don't have to worry about it. You can just let those things go and just listen with your heart, even if it doesn't always line up with your analytical mind. So I think that there will be plenty of berries in this basket that'll feed you. So yes, is the answer. I'm hoping that people will be able to find what their soul is thirsty for wherever they are. For those who are more experienced on the spiritual path, maybe have been walking in one or more of the spiritual traditions that I'll be speaking about for a long time, I'm hoping it will be refreshing to kind of hear it again through a new lens. Like every time I go to a Vipassana retreat, having had a meditation practice for decades, I still find those beginning instructions really fruitful all over again. So I'm hoping it will meet people wherever you are. Thank you for your question.
Yes, yes. And Deborah says, how can we best honor the feminine during this time of chaos?
Mm. That is such a great question, and every day I'm kind of being astonished by the ways in which the feminine is revealing herself to me as the medicine that we need for these times. So one of the main ways that I am finding the sacred feminine especially relevant right now, and a deep space of refuge, is that this this space in which we find ourselves of radical unknowingness right now. We don't know exactly. We're speaking from the time of this pandemic. We're in the center of the fire of the pandemic right now, sweeping across the globe, and all kinds of restrictions are being put in place. People don't know when they're going to be lifted, or even become more rigorous. We don't know when the world is going to begin to resemble anything like the world we left behind a month ago, if ever. Many of us are praying that we'll never go back to business as usual, because it has proven itself to be unsustainable, that we will find a new path, one that's more grounded in radical simplicity and mutuality. And this is the very domain of the feminine, I'd like to say. The, the landscape of radical unknowing, of mystery, deep mystery, and of relationship. Because what we're finding is that paradoxically, even in our isolation, as many of us are alone in our homes, unable to connect with and touch the people that we are accustomed to being connected with, we're finding this new sense of interbeing, of interconnection with all being, knowing that we're all in this together. Nobody is exempt. And that we are experiencing a felt sense of that web of light that we belong to right now. That's all very feminine. The technological solutions are not going to, at least immediately, fix what feels broken, but in fact, a response of the heart is what's required right now. Uh, 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 an experience of stillness and silence and a community of care, unlike we have ever really accessed before as a global community. So, both the tender aspects of the feminine, of loving kindness and mercy and forgiveness and relationship and feelings and emotions and bodies, and also the more wild aspect of the feminine, of creativity, of chaos, even, of truth telling, of that sword that slices through illusion and peels away all the superficial shit that we don't need anymore, both internally and externally. This is all the realm, to me, of the feminine. She's at home in mystery, in ambiguity, in liminality, in paradox, in stillness and in song.
Thank you so much. Tanya says, why do St. John and St. Teresa often or usually say she or her when referring to the soul, like the soul is a different entity?
Yes. So the convention of Christian mysticism in general, and the Spanish mystics in particular, San Juan de la Cruz, St. John of the Cross, and Santa Teresa de Avila, St. Teresa of Avila, the mystics who I've had the great privilege of translating. The convention is to use the language of romantic love, and it is in many traditions, to describe the relationship between the soul and the divine, lover and beloved, as it is in Jewish mysticism with the Song of Songs, and in Hindu mysticism with the Radha Krishna myth, and in so many other spiritual traditions. But in Christian mysticism in particular, the convention is to speak of the soul as feminine, she, lover, and God, or ultimate reality, the supreme, as beloved, he. And so even if the mystic is a man, he speaks of himself as she and speaks of God as he. So I'm really glad you asked this question, because it gives me the opportunity to say, as I often do, that while ultimate reality is in most, according to most mystical traditions, beyond all gender, here in form, in our embodied experience, we get to use our imagination to access the ineffable, the ultimate, the transcendent. And we do that through language, we do that through concepts, knowing at the same time, even as we're engaging, like the language of romantic love language, to describe the relationship of our individual embodied selves to the ultimate field of love, sometimes called God. We know that it's just a metaphor, that it's just a placeholder, that it's the finger pointing at the moon. And this love language, this luscious love language, opens the doors of the heart and enables us to actually gaze at that which the words are pointing to. So we use this language, the mystics use that language, knowing damn well that the reality of divine communion, of lover melting into beloved, transcends all such descriptions and even ideas. Mystical language is filled with paradox, and the paradox is meant like a good Zen koan to shake us out of our discursive coma and wake us up into the actual experience, direct experience of love.
Every time you give a response, Mirabai, I feel like I just want to sit and breathe it in. I know we don't have time to do that, but I
Thank you,
so do.
dear.
They're just beautiful. Gauri says, could you please talk about how to use the divine feminine energy to heal aspects of ourselves from abuse or sexual trauma?
Beautiful question, Gauri. So I write about that quite a bit in my book, what's it called again? Wild Mercy, living the fierce and tender wisdom of the women mystics. And because I too have been, I have experienced sexual abuse and sexualized trauma in the spiritual arena, which is a very tricky space because it was perpetrated by a self-proclaimed spiritual teacher. And so one of the things that I have found with the feminine is because the sacred feminine is all about embodiment, fully embodying and inhabiting our own dear selves. That when we open to that relationship with the sacred feminine, with ultimate reality as beloved mother or sister or lover or friend, there is no, we cannot any longer allow ourselves to be violated by those patriarchal impulses that have run and ruled and in many ways ruined the soul of the world. So what I found was that when I was younger, a lot of my contemplative and spiritual practices were designed to take me away from my embodied experience. That the masculine religious practices are very much about transcendence, about purification and perfection. And all of those practices are about denying the holiness of the body and of embodied experience. And a woman's body is a beautiful, riotous, messy, glorious place that doesn't abide by those purity principles very well at all. And so there I was trying to perfect myself into some kind of oblivion, thinking that I would get to God. That was all I wanted, get to God, whatever that meant. I would get to God by beating the shit out of myself, purifying and perfecting myself, the constant self-improvement project, so that I would become this kind of pulp that was so beaten down that I could dissolve into the one. I would no longer be in my own way. That's the masculine spiritual structure I inherited. And in the process of trying to purify and perfect myself, I opened myself to abuse because there was something wrong with being embodied. And so I might as well just let my body be a place where anything goes. I think that's where addictions come in also. It's like, who cares? The body is not holy, the body is unholy. So let it just well, what do I want to say? Once I reclaimed my body as holy ground, as the space where the feminine, sacred feminine dwells, I was able to cut off the abuse and reclaim myself. But over the years, the decades since then, I have allowed the loving presence of the sacred feminine to soothe all my wounds, because she comes at me with her arms open, with her heart blazing, with a smile on her face that says, I don't love you in spite of who you are and what has happened to you. I love you precisely because of every detail and nuance of what you are and what you've been through. And I have allowed myself to be loved by her loved into letting go of anything in me that felt unworthy or that attached itself to the story of my violation. We should tell these stories, by the way. I believe very strongly that our stories are holy and alchemical, and the telling itself can transmute the lead of our experience into the gold of connection with all being. But I'm no longer burned to death by what has happened to me. Instead, it's a softening into my participation in the human experience. And that softening came through the love of the Divine Mother and my opening and saying yes to her love. Gosh, that was a long, complicated answer. Excuse me.
It was powerful, though, and transformative and beautiful. Thank you. If you are just joining us, we are here with Mirabai Starr, learning about her upcoming course, Women Mystics and Goddesses, which begins on Wednesday, April 15th. Please log on to goddessesandmystics.com for all of the details and to register. And the next question, we've got so many juicy ones coming in, and everyone, please also continue to share your beautiful questions because there's so many amazing ones people are offering. Amy says, like you, I have felt drawn to wisdom teachings in so many places, and each has a unique resonance with my heart. So my question is, when there are so many ways to open up to the beloved and so many ways to act on this within our lives, how do we foster a deep connection and inspired social action when so many avenues are open to us?
Wonderful question, Amy. And as you may or may not know, I'm not sure how much of my work you're familiar with. This is a big theme for me, this interspiritual question. Because I personally was raised in the counterculture of this 1970s in Taos, New Mexico, where I still am, which was this place, this crossroads of so many different spiritual traditions. So I was exposed to multiple traditions from a really young age, and they were all presented to me as being equally true, equally valid. And it's been kind of natural for me to draw on Sufi wisdom teachings and chanting the name of Allah, and then to do a sweat lodge and to embrace a relationship with a Hindu guru, in my case, Neem Karoli Baba, and all the versions of the Divine Mother in the Hindu tradition, and to cultivate a Buddhist sitting practice. And of course, I'm madly in love with the Christian mystics who have helped me to fall in love with Christ. And I'm Jewish by birth, and right now I'm preparing for Passover, which is such a powerful metaphor for this time in which we find ourselves on this kind of wilderness space that we're in collectively as a human family. So I have not found it to be problematic to draw from multiple wisdom streams to not only fill the cup of my soul, but to offer something to others. But I did grow up with this messaging that was kind of subtle, but it was there, that actually the highest spiritual practice is to pick up one particular tradition, let the others go, let them inform you, have your heart open to multiple spiritual traditions, but practice deeply within one, and that's where the real goodies will come. So it's taken me many years to unpack the mythology of that messaging and to recognize that my particular experience is one of profound depth within multiple spiritual spaces. That's not superficial, it's not dabbling, I'm not a dilettante, that I am deeply connecting with the deep wisdom wells that are available through all of these spiritual traditions. And in our age, we have access to them all. We also could keep it very superficial and just, purchase and consume this and that, like the good Western, especially American consumers, many of us have been conditioned to be. But interspirituality does not preclude depth by definition. if your soul is open to finding the presence of the beloved everywhere, you will have a deep and naked and profound and real encounter. Now, the social justice piece is a wonderful and important part of your question, because my experience is when we access that living wisdom of love across the spiritual traditions, it naturally and irrevocably wakens our hearts to the suffering in the world and evokes a response of caring and action, compassion in action. We cannot open our hearts to these sacred wisdom teachings across the spiritual landscape without an answering response of the heart that says, I know now through felt experience that we are all interconnected. And so the suffering of any is the suffering of all. And that's why we have these beautiful wisdom teachings, like in Buddhism, the Bodhisattva vow, that invites us to open our hearts to the suffering of all beings and stay with it, stay present, caring for each other until all of us wake up to the truth of our interconnectedness. So I bless your interspiritual heart.
Thank you very much. Jane says, would you consider this to be a good or productive time for artists to enter into co-creation with the divine?
Yes, Jane, definitely. I mean, this is a beautiful time to make art. I've taken out my guitar that I haven't played in years, and I'm just finding myself playing music again. And every morning after my meditation, I have a bamboo flute that I carried around with me as a teenager and in my young 20s, just backpacking around Europe and places that you have to stand in line now to get to. Well, maybe not now, after COVID, who knows? But and I haven't played my bamboo flute in years, and I find that after my meditations, I'm playing my flute. When we still had our grandchildren up to a couple of weeks ago, just spreading out the art supplies and playing for hours. And now I walk past that basket that I left after they had to go to their houses and we're in our house, and I'm starting to make art again. I mean, I have plenty to do. It's like, have you noticed that in this time of the pandemic, there is an increased stillness and simplicity, yes, but we're also kind of potentially busier than ever. At least I am, with online teachings and everything, but I don't care. It's like I'm taking longer walks in the mountains and I am making art, and I am loving this renewed connection with the sacred feminine and the Shakti that just dances through us all the time, but is available in this time more than it seems like ever, because the distractions that keep her at a distance are stripped away. So yes, time to make art. And if you don't feel like it, like if you're listening to this and saying, I feel like I should be making art, I'm not being creative, what's wrong with me? That's okay too. It also takes a lot of work and effort to be present in this time of radical unknowingness, this time of pandemic, this period of isolation and restriction, just not knowing what's happening from day to day, worrying about our loved ones, worrying about other people we don't even know, those on the front lines, those on the margins. All of that can be a burden that we bear that prevents us from joyfully engaging in creative self-expression. So it is a wonderful time to make art if that's what's happening for you. And if it's not, there's nothing wrong with you, is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariana says, will this course be different from the previous courses we have participated in with you in recent years?
That's a great question. If I were you, I would be sick of me by now. So that's my my first answer. But that's like when when Nadira was talking about the Watkins list of the 100 most spiritually influential people, I mean, I just roll my eyes at that shit because I appreciate it. Thank you, Watkins, for naming me one of the 100, whatever. But I just make jokes about it. I walk around when people challenge me. I say, "Hey, I'm the most spiritual woman in America. Watch what you're saying." Like, I don't take any of that seriously. So I'm going to naturally respond to you by saying, you know, this is nothing new by nobody special, as my beloved teacher Ram Dass used to say. Is it different in any way? Well, definitely. It will be different because I am so different. I mean, I am not this fixed object. Like, for one thing, I'm not an enlightened being. I'm not sure anybody is, even my beloved guru. But I'm definitely a work in progress. And what's so exciting to me is the way that my inner life continues to change and transform and unfold, that there are constantly new insights, usually predicated on disillusionment, by the way, on my realizing that I don't know what the fuck is going on, and therefore it clears just clears the space for something new to emerge. And I think that this past year has been a time of death for me, inner small deaths that I am celebrating because I was starting to get pretty comfy in my arena of spiritual goodies, that I've cultivated over the years. And so I guess my training has enabled me to fire all the false gods that begin to, in very alluring ways, try to make me think that I understand what's going on here. So you have a more naked Mirabai than you probably have had before, I would say, because I've been beaten down by my disillusionments. And the other thing I would add is that this course is going to have a lot more contemplative space in it, where I gave more discursive teachings before, told more stories about the mystics and the goddesses. I mean, I'm a storyteller, so that'll happen, but more kind of spiritual teachings, but in the form of words. I think that this is going to be much quieter. I'm going to be inviting you to dwell with me in deeper spaces of stillness. And instead of talking about these wisdom beings so much, the goddesses and the mystics, I am going to be inviting you to join me in a place of intimacy with them so that you can truly find your own relationship with this gorgeous array of female wisdom keepers who then can be living presences in your life and allies on your path. And there will be certain ones that you will, I hope, in entering into these spaces of relationship, will become your favorites, your particular ancestors and tias, aunties and sisters and friends along the way. So it'll be more experiential in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to everyone watching that you can learn more about this course and register online at goddessesandmystics.com. Our next question is from Evelyn, who says, first and foremost, thank you for these wonderful transmissions from the Divine Feminine. My question for you is, it sounds as though each feminine being basically comes forth with the same message, which is love. What I'd like to know, however, and my question to them would be, What can we do personally and collectively to not let it affect us and remain the bright, illuminating lights for others during this unprecedented time when cool heads ought to prevail? I give gratitude for your time and any reply to this question.
Thank you. That's a multifaceted question. Okay, so the part I'm going to hook into of your question is not let it affect us. To me, the feminine response is almost the opposite of that. Like the masculine paradigm has taught us to be above it all. Let it just run off your back, like run off you like water off a duck's back or whatever. I remember when I was a passionate teenager and through my 20s, and well, still, um, people telling me like, parents, you're so sensitive and you should just let it wash over you. Like, how do people do that? I just don't know. And I thought there was something wrong with me because I was so sensitive and I let everything affect me so deeply. One of the things the feminine has taught me, the sacred feminine, is that the way my particular heart is, which is a heart that feels everything, is not only not a problem, it's my superpower. So how in these times, and it isn't for everybody, but that I have been able to come to a certain level of acceptance with my feminine heart that takes in the pain of the world, that I feel it in the cells of my own body. I feel the pain of my mother, the earth, as she cries out. I feel it in the cells of my own body. I'm feeling it right now as I'm speaking to you. How can we, as feminine wisdom beings ourselves, whether we're a woman or a man or a person of any gender or no gender identification, but as the feminine wisdom being that lives in us, how can we open our hearts like a great mother to the suffering of her children, gather it into our arms, and not be crushed by the weight of sorrow and of suffering? There is a way that when we allow ourselves to be fully touched by the pain of the world and our hearts break, they break open. They break open and become these vast containers for all that is. And guess what else is in there, in these vast broken open baskets of the heart? Joy, childlike wonderment, delight. All of those things are there too. I, for one, am experiencing this beautiful paradoxical blend right now of vivid awareness of the suffering in the world, the people who are ill, who are dying alone. I can't stand that. I mean, I've sat at the bedside of so many people as they were dying. The thought of anyone dying alone right now breaks my heart. And all the other things that I'm worried about right now. My own mother, who's in her 80s, who's strong and robust, but is also vulnerable. So close in, far away, I worry, I fret, but I feel the vulnerability in my own body. And I wake up every morning with this sweet sense lately, the last few weeks, of childlike joy. I don't know where it's coming from. I feel peaceful. I'm not in bad moods. I'm not irritable. I am enjoying cooking a meal like I've never enjoyed it before. I've loved cooking, but every little thing right now is infused with this kind of sweetness. That's what's needed too, I think. Like, we don't know what's going to happen after this pandemic, after the big wave. Probably everything will be different. But we are needed not only to be dispassionate people above the fray of it all, and not only to be worried and concerned about each other, but to be joyful, peaceful, childlike beings who can show up in the landscape that's ahead of us, which may be quite challenging. So your joy, your equanimity, your engagement, all of it is needed. Nothing should be abandoned or left out in the mother's heart.
Thank you very much. We're going to have time for one or two more questions, but before we take those, I want to tell you a little more about living the sacred blessings of the women mystics and goddesses. This is going to be a powerful, practice-based 12-week journey under Mirabai's inspiring and loving guidance, where we will develop and deepen intimate and loving relationships with the women mystics and goddesses, as well as with ourselves. The 12-week course takes place on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, starting Wednesday, April 15th. If for any reason you cannot join us live, you won't miss the teachings. You will receive audio and video replays, transcripts, and all course handouts via your course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks, in this case until April 29th, to make sure you love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to join a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers for the course will receive the Women Mystics and Goddesses bonus collection, which include Islam and Poetry, an audio dialogue with Mirabai Starr and Mona Haidar, an Islamic slam poet and peace activist. You may recognize Mona from her viral music video, Hijabi, also known as Rap My Hijab. In this special session and dialogue, Mona will share some of her powerful poetry along with teachings from the essence of Islam. You will also receive Earth Treasure Vases, a video dialogue with Mirabai Starr and Cynthia Jers. In this dialogue, Cynthia describes her unique expression of spiritual activism. Inspired by an ancient Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Earth Treasure Vase Global Healing Project brings healing and protection to the earth by filling consecrated clay vessels with prayers and offerings and ceremonially burying them in the earth in collaboration with indigenous elders, young activists, and grassroots leaders in places where healing and protection are most needed around the planet. You will also receive Whatever Seems to Be in the Way is the Way, audio dialogue with Mirabai Starr and Miranda McPherson about how to embrace everything, including difficult issues such as loss, heartbreak, sickness, and the unexpected as gateways into direct mystical experience. And if you register by April 8th, you will also receive this special bonus conversation, Abiding in Uncertainty and Liminal Space, Shekhinah's Voice in Our Time, a video dialogue with Mirabai Starr and Tirza Firestone, exploring the question, how do we approach the global phenomenon unfolding in our midst with a spiritual orientation, one that is infused with the wisdom of the divine feminine? Mirabai, can you take a moment and just share what you are most looking forward to offering in this upcoming course?
What my heart is really wanting to help create right now is a refuge, a sanctuary, not as a place of self-indulgence or getting or a spiritual bypass to get away from what's real, but quite the opposite, to soften and yield into the very ground of what is, but infused by the loving tenderness of the sacred feminine, so that we can feel loved into action, comforted into a kind of engaged, peaceful, courageous knowing that we are enough and we have enough. And so it's almost like I see this as an oasis in the desert, or a fire around which we can all gather in a cold forest and warm our hands and eat something yummy and drink something intoxicating and remember that we belong to each other, and we have this circle of allies, of ancestors, of soul friends who will walk with us through everything that is to come. Sanctuary, refuge, that's what I'm excited about.
Yes, we take refuge in the beauty and in the sanctuary of what's being offered here. This next question is actually a combination of a couple questions. So Catherine offered a portion of it, and then the other portion was an anonymous offer. But it is, how can we better feel the connection and not just experience this offering as a mental exercise or study?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Because we're going to be doing practices, we're going to be doing a lot of guided meditations, chanting, writing prompts, um, some very specific tools and methodologies that I have had the great gift of receiving from multiple spiritual traditions, but also an organic response of my own being to the realities of the moment. I'm going to be sharing a lot of poetry. For me, all poetry, all good poetry is mystical poetry, but as a portal into these spaces of the heart that contain opportunities for direct experience of the sacred, not just mental concepts. And I'm a scholar, so sort of, so I have a lot of mental concepts, and I am very intentionally divesting myself of this impulse to just offer information and inviting you into these spaces where I spend a lot of my life that are more contemplative, empty spaces of the heart. They're not abstract, disembodied, non dual places, although that's part of it. But mostly they're about living in the heart, which is intimately and inextricably entwined with living in the body. So maybe more embodied, more contemplative and more embodied. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final question is from Natasha, who says, Mirabai, what qualities do you think are most important as students?
Oh, wow. I've never had that question before. Um, okay. Guess what just arose in me? No students, no teacher, companions around the fire. I mean, yes, let's say I'm the storyteller around that fire this time. And it's, could be any of us, because so many of us come to this circle with deep life experience on the spiritual path and in the world, which are kind of the same, in my opinion. So, so I'm not interested in the hierarchy that we've inherited from the masculine paradigm of spirituality across the religious tradition. I'm interested in our collective wisdom. And so even as I am sitting in the seat of the teacher in this moment, we are all the teachers and we are all the students. I'm definitely a student with you. So what would I hope we come to is to leave our cynicism at the door, and also that impulse of perfectionism, that self-improvement project has no place in this circle around this particular fire. You are perfect. You are pure. You are a vessel for the sacred presence, and you are worthy exactly as you are. So you can be bored. You can be engaged. You can be creative. You can be dry. However you come to this field of the heart is exactly what is needed in this gathering. I hope that's not doesn't sound like a cop out, but that's truly how I feel. Come as you are. You're just right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to gush all over you and just, as always, you always create such a feeling um, of authenticity, definitely. But there's also always this feeling of deep, heartfelt connection and so much experience, and it feels like you're a safe place for students or fellow walkers on the path to be real and honest and true. And so I just want to acknowledge and celebrate that in you, Mirabai. I always love that about you. Thank you for a wonderful hour. And thank you to everyone for being with us. Mirabai, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your glorious heart with all of us on the call today. Women Mystics and Goddesses starts next week, Wednesday, April 15th. And again, please visit goddessesandmystics.com to learn more and to register. Mirabai, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Oh gosh, it just feels like next week when we start this journey together is going to be a really vital time on the planet. And that when we all gather, we're going to be infusing the world with a dose of loving kindness um, and wild heart that is going to be really needed. So I hope it gives something to each of you, but the timing feels really important for the world somehow.
Yes. And it's a full moon today, so everyone who's feeling that, feel it, continue to feel it. Thank you again. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And on behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well, and I look forward to having you on this course or on another one in the future. Take care.